Welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. My name is Audrey Monkey, and I am your host. Here at Sunshine Parenting, I believe that together we can raise a generation of happy, connected kids who bring positive changes to the world. I share ideas, stories, and tips to help parents and anyone else who works with young people raise competent, kind, optimistic kids. In this episode, episode 25, I'm talking with Steve and Susan, the owners and directors of Carmel Valley Tennis Camp. We cover a lot of great topics. This is especially helpful for any parents who are looking at sending your child to a specialty camp or sports camp this summer, as we discuss many great questions that you can ask the camp director. Enjoy episode 25. So, Steve and Susan, thanks so much for being here. This is so much fun to talk to you. This is an in-person interview, which is so much more fun than trying to do it over the phone. So why don't we start, just introduce yourselves.
Okay, I'm Steve Proulx, and I'm one of the three owners and directors of Carmel Valley Tennis Camp.
And I'm Susan Reeder, and I'm one of the three owners of Carmel Valley Tennis Camp. And Carmel Valley Tennis Camp is obviously our focus is tennis, and we are located in Carmel Valley, which is south of San Francisco. And our program is, we deal with the whole child, and but our focus is tennis. But we have a full camp experience. We're accredited by the American Camp Association. We are members of WAKE, and which really makes us very different than many sports camps.
Yes, and that's definitely why I have you here, because I think that, sports camps and these specialty camps have become such a big deal that so many parents are looking to send their kids to some kind of, usually 1 week, sometimes longer program to enhance, whether it's a specific sports, or even there's some for other, areas, non-sports. But I have found that your program seems very different. And I know I've experienced it as a parent as well, with my son having attended several years for tennis camp. And there's something a lot different about your camp than many of these other sports camps. You kind of mentioned it a little bit, but why don't you go into a little bit more about how you view, just like how you hire your staff and how you look at supervision and that kind of thing, and how that's important to you.
I would say probably the biggest thing is that we are accredited by the American Camp Association, which is really huge in regards to what you have to do to get that accreditation. We're the only tennis camp that is accredited anywhere in the West. And what that does is it looks at our program. It also looks at the health and safety. And I think it's an important thing to ask with a sports camp if they are accredited. And if not that, the big question to ask is, who is watching my child hour to hour? Because I think a lot of times with sports camp, it can be one person's name, and their staff is not necessarily trained, or that there are good sports camps. There's no question about that, but it's just hit or miss. You don't really have there isn't any guarantee. It's not any of it's whether it's at a good college or whether it's at a whatever school or whatever backing sports companies behind it. That doesn't say that there's any kind of dealing with the children and care and supervision of children.
So really, you need to think about your kid and who's going to be with your kid. So
Absolutely.
It's, so maybe you'll know that, it's this, this sports person or this company that's backing it. But so you might know, okay, well, the soccer instruction is going to be good, probably. Right. But how many hours, I guess that's another question. In a day at a sports camp, how many hours are they doing the sport versus sort of free time or different time?
I think that's a really good question to ask for any parent to ask of whoever they're speaking to in regards to a camp. Our belief is that what we want to do with tennis is we want kids to learn to love the game. Mm-hmm. And we're not what's known as a drill and kill tennis camp. I mean, that's a phrase that you'll hear at times. And there are people that believe that you just put a kid on a court from 8 in the morning until 6 at night and they're going to get better. Well, there may be the rare exception that will work for, but the vast majority of kids, that's not going to be helpful to them. So in our opinion, the best thing to do is have kids on the court, off the court, so they have a break from tennis. They get a lot of tennis at our program. They get as much tennis as any of the other quote-unquote sports camps that we know of that are tennis camps. A child that wants a lot of tennis can certainly get that at our place. But at the same time, the only way that you can deal with the whole child is you got to give them a break from the sport, because if all you're doing is eating, breathing, living the sport, our belief is that you're going to burn out from the sport. And again, we go back to our goal is that when kids leave camp, they've developed a greater love for the game. They want to go back. They want to go home. They want to play more, because tennis is a sport for a lifetime. And there are many other sports that you can do the same with.
And I think one of the things too is that we have, we have beginning kids. I mean, we have kids that are beginning through ranked tournament players, and which is, we're not just dealing with the high performing kids. We've got those kids that come to camp, and we're not dealing with just beginners. I mean, we have 10 different tennis groups, which allows us, 2 kids that are friends that can come together. One who plays tournaments and plays all year round, and the other one who's we have some kids that are doing that, absolutely, and then they may have a friend that comes to camp that the only time they play tennis is when they're at camp.
Right.
Which is all fine because of the way we structure that. They're all together for evening activities because we have super organized evening activities. We've got a ropes course, we've got an archery range. We have all these different fun things that kids can do, and we believe that there's lots of hours in the day, and you've got to have these great fun things to do and well-rounded.
Oh, yeah. And, it's interesting when you were saying that, for a kid to know that it's okay to be a beginner is also an important thing to know. So probably if you're looking at a sports camp for your child, you want to know that they will accommodate any level. And I would want a place that has not just all these completely crazy drill and kill kids that have been just going, you want to have sort of well-balanced other athletes. And how nice for you to be able to tell parents that, we do have some really great tennis players who are tournament level. And then also we have kids who are beginners, and it's fun for both.
Yeah, and it's not about putting them on the same court together.
Right, right.
But it's about being in the same place and being able to recognize, for somebody that's a more advanced player to remember, I started out like that. I was a beginner at one time myself. And for a beginner to see somebody that maybe is their own age that's become a very accomplished player and say, wow, that's pretty amazing. They've obviously put some time into it.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned one thing. So when parents are looking at a sports camp, because I know some of the listeners, maybe they're not going to do tennis camp, which of course, if they do tennis camp, they should go to your camp. But if they were looking at, say, some other kind of sports camp, besides who is going to be supervising my child, especially I would say during the non-sports times, like during meals and those evening hours, are there any other events going on or activities besides just the sport? What other questions do you think parents should be asking the directors of these programs?
I would say what their technology policies are, because I think that's what do they allow cell phones? Do they have access to them constantly? Can they be on their cell phones in a dorm room with somebody else, 2 or 3 kids in a room, and that they can all be at 2:00 in the morning on social media? So I think that's a big issue. To find out what those policies are and how they handle it. And then, the big thing is what, kind of who is, who's watching my kid, who's looking out for them, who's looking to see if they're homesick or if they're, in the room by themselves, or if they can walk into town with a group of kids without somebody, knowing where they are. I think I think that, and even with, older kids, which are, that maybe kids that are 14, 15, 16 years old, they're still high school kids. And college campuses are set up for kids of college age. And so do you want in some ways it's a great way to see if they like that college or that university, but at the same hand, I think it is really important for parents to really ask those questions. And we hear that people ask us, and we encourage them and to please, ask us the questions, ask whoever, because you can't assume anybody can open a camp. Anybody can open a camp. And so that I think that it is really important for the parents to, to ask the questions, and there's no dumb questions. There's nothing, but you really really need to do that.
I'd say another important question from a parent's point of view is, what is the philosophy of the camp in regard to the sport, whatever the sport happens to be. What's driving that particular camp? Is it about, well, we're going to make sure we get your kid primed to be able to go into college and play college sports? I mean, maybe that's something that's what the intent of that particular program is. Well, you need to know that as a parent. You've got an 11-year-old, and the philosophy is we're going to get your kid ready for college soccer. Well, is an 11-year-old really in a position that you want to be spending that kind of time with? So really ask the question of, what's the philosophy of the camp? What do you want? What are you trying to provide for my child so that when my child walks away from your camp, they're going to have this to take with them? What is the this that they're taking with them?
Mm-hmm. And you've already said you want kids to love tennis and want to keep playing. So even if they decide, they're not going to play in college, you'd like them to still want to play with their friends and
sport for a lifetime.
Absolutely.
Right.
And one of the things, for us, when we talk about playing the game of tennis, we both have played a lot of tennis in our lives and had many accomplishments with it. At the same time, we're big believers in play a lot of sports. For us with our tennis camp, we're not after saying to kids, you come to our camp and then you got to make sure you go home and you play tennis 52 weeks a year. I mean, if you're 11 years old, 12 years old, 13 years old, and you're playing 52 weeks a year of tennis or any particular sport, and you're only playing that one sport, our belief is that's going to drive kids out of sports. Mm-hmm. We want kids to love sports, and one of the ways you do that is you play a variety of sports. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because there's the very rare exception that's going to go on and play professional sports, whatever the sport happens to be. That's a very, very, very small percentage of people. There's a little bit larger percentage that will go on and play college sports, but even at that, there's a wide range of college sports. You don't have to be a Division I player to play college sports and have a good time with it.
Right.
We have we've dealt with staff over the years that have played Division III, they've played NAIA, they play Division II, where they're playing college sports, but it's not at the level of, well, you have to eat, live, breathe, 24 hours a day.
I would say the other big question is to find out who the staff is and what their staff training is. Is there any staff training?
Besides the sports drills?
Yeah, right. Exactly. And it's like that is, because then I would say that's one of the things, and with, again, kind of going back to the accreditation, is that, is how you train your staff, what you do with your staff, what your staff is held to, is incredibly high. And that's where I think that, again, you might find that, in a sports camp, and you might not. It's kind of hit or miss. Whereas, again, with that accreditation, because you are, as far as and what we do, we kind of come into it, of our staff, the reason that we hire a staff and, interview them extensively and do the staff training, we hire people that are great role models. Mm-hmm. And that is absolutely, they have to have the tennis skills. They all have to be playing college tennis. They have to have those skills. But most importantly, it's who these kids are, and they have well-balanced lives. They want to play, they enjoy tennis and they're playing tennis, but they're also, they want to be teachers. They want to be pediatricians. They like kids. And
that's kind of an important point, actually.
Totally.
Do your staff. Interestingly enough, if you're sending your child somewhere, you sort of want to know that the people there like kids.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and it's huge.
It seems silly, but you could end up at a place where maybe some of the people like their sport more than they like kids.
Exactly.
And then do you want your 9 or 10-year-old learning the sport from someone who doesn't have a good rapport with kids?
Exactly.
I guess they could be a really high-powered athlete and not good at coaching or helping kids.
Absolutely. And that's just and that's one of the things that I think that, because on one hand, as far as the sports camp, I think we do have a good reputation as far as, that we always have good staffs. But, and it's like there's a lot of the training, and we've learned so much through ACA on that. The American Camp Association, as far as training your staff, and as far as the care and supervision of children, and so we have just these incredible young people who are also incredibly accomplished, tennis players, and you can have the same thing, but it's not always. One of our questions in our interview, we have an extensive interview process, but one of them is, when have you put the needs of another person in front of yourself? Mm-hmm. Because in somebody that's excelled at it, really excelled, many times they haven't done that. It's like, which is not camp is not a good environment for them then.
Right.
Because you're constantly having to put the needs of people in front of yourself. And we also do have incredible people that do, that question really helps us find out if that person, that tennis player, is going to be a good fit for camp.
Yeah. So interesting when you said that, the Olympics are going on right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And you think about like those kids who are at that level, and when have they had the opportunity to put other people in front of themselves? Because usually it's a bunch of other people are putting them, like their parents, and they move to different places and they have this crazy life of that's so focused and so much time. And that's a really interesting question that maybe, even the higher up you get perhaps in these things, and the more time you're investing only in that one thing, you have less time available to really, you have to be, if people are telling you you're trying to get the scholarship or Olympics or whatever, maybe the mindset is, I've got to put me first. I don't know. Do you guys think that with sports?
Yeah.
Is it like at the higher, more elite level, do we get kind of maybe less able to think outside ourselves?
Well, actually, the reality is, and I think that's probably where, parenting comes in hugely with this whole thing, and particularly even kids that are excelling. And because when it comes down to it, and I think most kids that are going to play college tennis, or really excel at college, is that, their parents have a great balance, of understanding that this is, whatever the sport is, it's a sport, it's a game. It's, it's all about what the life lessons are that you learn from it. And so I think that we do have, we have some phenomenal staff who have really liked tennis, but it's just part of their life. It's not their life, and I think that's where you kind of run into, and obviously, to make it into the Olympics, I mean, that's a whole different level in the pros. I mean, that's just a whole different level, and that kind of commitment to go with that, it's great. Those are, somebody that's going to play the Olympics in tennis or whatever is not going to be a counselor at tennis. No. Carmel Valley Tennis Camp.
Or at any camp.
Any camp.
They do not have time to do that.
So that's kind of a whole different
They're not going to be at any of the tennis camps.
But at the other hand,
although you can probably edit this out, we'll see. But we actually had a guy who worked for us for 4 summers as a counselor from Kazakhstan. And he had been the number 1 player in Kazakhstan from the age of 15, and he played Davis Cup for them. And he tried to make it on the ATP Tour, and he couldn't get ranked higher than 900, and so his funding got lost, and he came to school in the U.S. and went to the University of South Alabama. Okay, he worked for us for 4 years. He then got a master's in the U.S. He worked some on the East Coast. Currently, he's in charge of tennis for the country of Kazakhstan.
Wow.
He runs their Davis Cup team. When we're watching the Tennis Channel and we see him coaching his team against Switzerland and he's coaching his player against Roger Federer, that's kind of cool.
That's really
cool. And then
cool.
at the same time, here's a guy that was at the London Olympics, and he sends an email during the middle of the summer that says to read to our staff that says, I'm here at the London Olympics and I'd rather be at CVTC.
Oh, isn't that? Yeah. Because
so
probably just the people to be around.
The people and the sense of community.
It's got to be a little bit, I mean, I don't know. And that was one of the things we talked about before that I wanted you to address. And just, since you've had all these years, how many years have you been running CVTC now?
This will be our 24th summer this summer.
So you've met a lot of kids, a lot of tennis players, and a lot of parents over the years. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the parents who you think, what are some of the things that parents do that really encourages their kids and kind of, it helps their kids with the sport? I guess put it that way. What are the positive things that parents can do to encourage their kids but not, make it too crazy for them?
I think it's like letting them, letting kids, not putting, pressure on them or whatever. If they like it, if they like a sport, whatever the sport may be, if they like it, just give them the opportunity to do it, but not necessarily get too involved in it, and let them, again, it's like have fun with it. And I think that is hard because a parent who hasn't been in sport, or hasn't been a tennis player maybe, or hasn't been in sports, and it's hard to kind of weed out what someone's telling you, which is, because there's, as in any sports, there's some really good people and there's people that are maybe not so good. and that want to but there's definitely people.
You mean like
John
in terms
Wooden,
of like where they're kind of like pushing you to get your kid to do more stuff? Is that what you're saying? Like there's maybe a coach that says
you've got to play tennis all year round. You can't play soccer. You can't go somewhere.
Okay.
You can't do this.
Right.
You have to be in my program
Right.
or
Right.
those
usually paying many thousands of dollars too. I've noticed that all of these things that are supposedly like you must do in order to, in our area, it's even just to get on the high school teams.
Right.
Because oftentimes the club programs are run by the coaches at the...
Right. And if you're in my program, you'll have a better...
and it's a really weird thing. Yeah. So it's even... and so it's more promoted, that year-round thing is really like, people think that's a really great thing. Like, my kid only does this one sport.
Yeah, which isn't, and I think it's actually it's a big red flag if you're having a coach or somebody who is basically wanting to sell you something, because there's some super good pros, do you know what I mean? And in tennis, the organization is the USPTA, which is the United States Professional Tennis Association, and there is a certification with that. So those are, and then there's, but I mean, as in anything, there's good folks with it, and there's people that are not so legitimate.
But I would say the thing for the parents that do well are the parents that have created a partnership with the coach, with the pro, where they've gotten to know who the pro is, and they get on the same page. And so the parents, in a sense, got to let go if they're going to have their child is going to play in this particular sport, but not let go completely, so that they're partnering with the pro, and the pro's not saying, well, now you got to do this, now you got to do this, now you got to do this, but it's, okay, let's look at what we're doing here, and how are we managing my son or my daughter so that they can continue to improve, but they're loving the game, because
that's the first time they don't like it.
Because I don't care what the sport is, if the child reaches a point where they're not loving it, they're not going to keep playing it. No matter how talented they might be, no matter how good they might be in that particular sport, if they don't really enjoy it, then they're doing it. You're creating a job for a child. And children aren't, I mean, yes, you can have your summer job. You can be in
the paper route.
Yeah. You mow the lawns. Right. You can have those kind of jobs. But
it should, when it gets to that point when you're so young, that's terrible.
Not when a sport becomes.
Right. And a lot of times, and if your kid is not, your child's not, they used to love soccer and they're not enjoying soccer now, I think you probably need to investigate what is that reason. Are they not feeling successful? Because that's what nobody. It's like we like to do things that we do well and that we feel good about. Right. So look at, because it could very well be the program they're in. It could be that's a big thing to look at. And I do think one of the things that's that we really pay attention to or focus on, and it's a big part of our program, is helping kids understand competition. So we are different here. There's like non-competitive programs. I mean, as we know, there's camps that and all kinds of philosophies. It's like I don't that are non-competitive. It's not competitive. They don't want that, and that's totally fine. We happen to choose that we're in, that as far as tennis, it is. I mean, somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. And so we feel like one of the, the skills that we can really help kids with is understanding competition.
Yes.
And being able to deal with that and not, as far as judging yourself. I mean, we understand all that. And we do, I think, with sportsmanship being a cornerstone, but also to strive for, because we understand, having been, the three of us have all been tennis players. And, I being an 11-year-old kid and sobbing because I lost a match. I mean, I know that.
Yeah.
I know that. Yeah. And it's like, but helping kids, we're teaching children of helping them, because it is a competitive world.
Right.
I mean,
for sure. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that kind of skill is one of the things that we really, and our vehicle is tennis just because that's where our background is, but it could be, it's all those, and it is an individual sport too, which even makes it, harder in a certain sense, but also great for developing, grit. All kinds of great skills. So I think we view the game of tennis and all this as just living life.
Oh gosh, and I'm sure they learn so many lessons. Yeah, there's so many lessons from tennis and those matches and losing matches gracefully and winning matches gracefully and dealing with errors and talking to yourself better or whatever you need to
Right.
do. So many lessons.
Right.
And if you have a skilled instructor with them,
Right.
who's teaching them tennis, that person is also saying, wow, it seems like you got really frustrated, after you made a few mistakes, how did that feel? So I love that you guys are looking at not just the kids, their stroke.
Their stroke.
You're
exactly.
looking at,
Stroke
their strokes, and wow, during that match, they got really frustrated with themselves. And boy, after they got frustrated and like talking that kind of stuff through with them, and they can then take that to other hard things,
Right. Right.
outside of tennis. So I'm a big, even though my camp doesn't do like competitive sports, I think sports are great for kids. And, I think, when you join a team of any kind and you have to deal with all your teammates and you have to get assigned to a position maybe sometimes you don't like, or sit on the bench a lot, or all of those things really can be
Build
good
character.
and build character as
Right.
long as you're debriefing on them and, kind of thinking about it and making it that, okay, well, like I kind of have the philosophy with our kids, like, you know what, you need to be doing something to keep your body moving.
Right.
You know what, so you can do something. So what is that going to be? If, that we can think of things not at school or whatever, but, I really let them pick. And sometimes, gosh, I had one kid who was really good at softball. She's like, this great, very clean pitch, always across the plate, really good. She had some huge victories, like when she was 8 years old, but it got to the point by the time she got to like 8th grade that, oh my gosh, coaching and the stress and, the wanting her to do the club and and we all just were like, well, she didn't even want to do it. So we're like, well, okay, it's kind of sad because boy, you're really good at this, but at the same time, it's like if you're not having fun,
Right.
and you can do other things. So then she played soccer and did all these other things too. So I just think sports are a great way to learn and to push yourself to learn more about yourself. And we're missing an opportunity if like your kid is at a sports camp and all they're doing is doing drills on a sport.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And at the same hand, that being at a sports camp, though, can, if it's a good camp.
Yes.
It can be great because what it is, and, because I know that what we create, and I know there's other great camps, you know what I mean, that do, whatever it's soccer or it's lacrosse or different types of camps. But that is, that it is something that, it's a safe place. Mm-hmm. I mean, and so that's what we see because particularly with like junior tennis or whatever, which can be so, if you're, everybody's there at the tournament and people are watching it, or whether it's soccer, the same kind of thing. There's all these external pressures. When you're at camp, it's a safe place to be able to, come in to talk to your counselor or to talk to us or to whatever, it's like kind of sobbing. I'm like, whatever. I was like, I should have won that match or whatever. I mean, all those things. It's safe. It's not like they have to keep, it's like, it's camp, which is our biggest, most wonderful thing. And I know all camps are, it's like all way camps, everything for sure it's a safe place for kids. Right. It is a safe place for them to be able to help work through those, which is, then it gives them kind of a little bit, skills in the real world.
Yeah. But another thing I was going to say is that, we all know that in terms of learning anything, when you're in an uncomfortable situation, that's when you generally learn the most, okay? There's nothing more uncomfortable than being on a tennis court and losing, especially losing to somebody. I know I'm better than so-and-so. Okay? I've
heard that one.
He's just a pusher. He's just a pusher. And, I'm a much better player. Okay, so that's uncomfortable. Well, to be in a camp setting where there's enough support for talking through this, then you have the opportunity to learn about, okay, I lost the match. It's not the end of the world, and it's not because he's a pusher. It's because he played better than I did on that day at that time, and I'm going to need to do something different if I'm going to be able to beat him. So to me, that's a really important part of the learning experience is every time you go out there, and our campers know this about me, is when they finish a match, when they walk by, I never ask who won. The first question I ask is, how did you play?
And all our staff do the same thing.
Great.
How'd you great? The staff train the staff to do the same thing. It's
when they come off the court, because we watch them come off the court, and generally it's pretty obvious who won and who lost, because kids are kids. Well, the first question, how'd you play? And they'll, if the child, well, I lost. I didn't ask whether you lost or won. I asked, how'd you play? Well, and then I get them thinking about how they played, and that's what the game is about. How did you play, and what would you do differently the next time? What did you do well? What did you do poorly? And that's, to me, that's what any sport should be all about. You finish whatever you're playing. I don't care what the sport is: basketball, lacrosse, sailing. You can do anything. You finish. How did you do? How did you perform in that sport? What did you do well? What did you do poorly? And what can you learn from it?
Yeah. Which I think we're doing more, and we're doing a lot with this and always have, but and other sports camps are for sure, absolutely too, is with focus. Do you know what I mean? I mean, those little things that we do, I know all camps are, as far as doing, how you keep your focus, how you get your mind out of, whether it's like I should be winning this, get out of your head and focus. And we do, whether it's bounce hit, counting these little skills that help you get into the moment so that you can play your best, whether it's a musical instrument, whether it's, that kind of focus is, and sports is neat for that too.
Yeah, so like when you've made a mistake, and see, again, this is definitely for not just tennis, but for life. So you've made a mistake, or you did a bad hit, or whatever they call it. I'm not to get on my tennis language. But they do something wrong, and they can, in their head, start saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did that. Oh my gosh. Exactly. Oh my gosh. And then it leads to probably another one in this downward spiral. But if they can focus on these skills that you're giving them to do other things, to get their mind off of that error, and move on, that again, a great metaphor for life. Well, I'm sure we've been talking for longer than we intended anyway, and this was really good. And I think I really like, Steve, those questions that you were just saying. When you were saying, how did you play? I just kept thinking, and all of those questions afterwards, those are good not just for tennis, but for everything. I think as parents, we're so much better off when we ask about the process of whatever it was. How did you feel when, during that test? How did you feel when you had to, ask this new friend over and, they said no or whatever? All these things it's more important for our kids to work through, what happened, how they were feeling, what they could do next time differently. Because really, I always laugh about sports. All the parents were so obsessed with whether the kids win or lose, and then no one can even remember. Like a week later. We just ended soccer season. Wait, where were we last week? Which game was that? You really, it's funny because in the moment, of course, everyone thinks that it's, the live all end all, but you don't really remember the score, but you remember certain things. Like you remember, that kid that we played against that was, so nice and met me after, there's things like that. And so I think that's such a good kind of way to think about both sports and just parenting in general from your perspective. You guys have shared so many good things. So thank you so much
thank you
for being on today. I had such a fabulous time talking with Susan and Steve about Carmel Valley Tennis Camp and so much more. I have put detailed notes and information about all the things we discussed, including camp accreditation, good questions to ask us about a sports camp or specialty program, as well as just some good advice for parents of athletes. You can find notes about our podcast episode at sunshine-parenting.com. Search for episode 25. If you don't already receive the Sunshine Parenting weekly emails, I would love to invite you to join my community. This year, each month, I'm sharing one simple thing to help your family become more connected, relaxed, and have more fun this year. You can sign up to receive my emails at my website at sunshine-parenting.com. I'll leave you with one of my favorite quotes and one that I shared this week on Instagram. Let us always meet each other with a smile, for a smile is the beginning of love. Mother Teresa.